Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to my session today. This is going to be a pretty quick and a very targeted session, specifically on how the best practices on how to deploy Windows Admin Center, the best practices for deployment, configuration, and security. Just to do some level setting, I just want to know my audience and see who knows what about Windows Admin Center. So if I can get a raise of hands, who just learned about Windows Admin Center at this Ignite? All right. And then on the contrasting, who's been with the Windows Admin Center since 2017 when it was Project Honolulu? All right, so a little more than half. So today, like I said, it's going to be a pretty targeted session. Windows Admin Center has a very flexible architecture. And in the session today, we will specifically be speaking about just installation of Windows Admin Center on wherever you want to deploy it. And if for those of you that have been using Windows Admin Center for a while, you know that there's two primary ways to install it. You either install it on your Windows 10 desktop or on a dedicated gateway server. The main difference between these two installations is identity. When you're managing from a Windows 10 desktop, you are you. You are the blue person here. And you just send your requests to the server you want to manage. It's easy, it's peasy, it's simple. If you're trying to just kick the tires of Windows Admin Center, just see what it's like, see what it can do, you can do this in 10 minutes. You just download, install, and manage your servers. So when you deploy on a server, who here understands Kerberos? That's not very many people. And it is a tricky thing. And I'm trying to visualize it here. And for those of you that just understood raised your hands to say you understood it, don't criticize it. This is an incredible oversimplification. So when you have it on the gateway server and you start from your PC, you, Mr. Blue Man, you send your request to the dedicated server. At that point, the server has to send the ticket to the next level. But this ticket comes from the machine. It doesn't come from me. What the server has to figure out is whether it can delegate. If this server is trusted for delegation for me, and if it is, it will execute the command, and if not, access denied. And a little later, I'll talk about how that delegation is set up and so forth. So that is the main difference between Windows 10 deployment and a dedicated gateway server. And just to go over a couple key points, when you're on a Windows 10 desktop, you're up and running in minutes. You just download aka.ms/whack download. You get the MSI, you install it on your machine, and you're up and running in minutes. This works great if you use a PA or a SAW in your machine. This is how we manage Azure. This is how this is the most secure way to manage your infrastructure, and Windows Admin Center in desktop mode works fantastic on a PA or a SAW machine. And I do have these two little links down here to learn more about those if you're not using a PA or SAW architecture in your environment. Some of the limitations. Lots of people still use smart card alt accounts. You can use smart card alt accounts with Windows Admin Center. It takes that delegation thing that I talked about on the last slide, and I'll talk about that a little more in the future. But in desktop mode, you can't use smart card alt accounts. And kind of in a related way, when you install Windows Admin Center on a PC, only one person. If it's a shared workstation, it only works for the person that installed it. So when you go on a dedicated gateway server, there's nothing for the users to install. They just have their browser. It has to be a modern browser like the new Chromium-based Edge or Chrome, but they should have that. And you have an opportunity to centralize your administration tools. That you can have all your users just point to a gateway, or a certain team each one of them has their own gateway. You can control access to that gateway for those users on the top by using security groups and Active Directory. You can specify some users as gateway admins who can then control the further access control of it. Gateway admins can also control the extensions and just all the extensibility in Windows Admin Center. Another benefit from doing the gateway server is you can configure your environment in such a way that those gateways are the only thing that can be trusted to manage your nodes. Like in this example here, it's fine for the gateway to talk to him, but when that guy tries to talk to the first node right there, he just gets denied. Another thing, when you have a gateway server, you can use it like a jump server into your partitioned environments, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that in the past. Jump servers are a really well-established concept. Lots of people have been using them for a long time, and Windows Admin Center really kind of consolidates all the tools that you might be using on an old jump server, but via RDP into just a web interface on 443 or whatever HTTPS endpoint you set up. When you install Windows Admin Center on a gateway, you will need a certificate because it's basically a website. It's a HTTPS endpoint and a web interface, so you do need that PKI certificate to not get a warning from your browser. When we ship the installer, we do have an option for a self-signed certificate when you install it, but you'll get all the warnings in your browser, and that's not recommended for any production environments. There's the delegation. If you do want to do that, if you want to manage the end nodes, you need to configure delegation so the end nodes trust that gateway server for delegation. This is what changes the question mark to a green check. And when you're in a gateway mode, it enables the use of the smart card alt accounts. So to use a smart card alt account in gateway mode, there's a little nuance involved. What you need to do is you need to run the browser as a different user. You can do this with Chrome or the new Chromium-based Microsoft Edge, which you can get at MicrosoftEdgeInsider.com, and there's been all kinds of people talking about it here. So when you just right-click, you shift and right-click to choose Run as Different User. You can put in your smart card. I don't have a smart card alt account, otherwise I would show you the thing, but you put in your smart card, put in your PIN, and you're elevated. Your browser's now running in a different context than your logged-in user. And to visualize that on my previous diagram where I showed the identity flow, you're elevating to your smart card alt account, which is running Edge. And then that goes to the middle server, and the red man goes over here. So you can see why this requires delegation. You can't just go over here and say manage as and use your smart card alt account, mainly because smart card alt accounts don't have passwords. You need to physically install the smart card and do the PIN. So there's a couple different variations on the gateway deployment that we need to talk about. This is just the dedicated gateway server we've been talking about so far. But you can also just install it on the managed node of a cluster, or you can install it on a cluster as a highly available service. When you install it on the managed node, you can do that for maybe in a dedicated environment where you don't want to use any more resources. Or if you have like an appliance or a black box distribution that you support, you can use this. This is like a support break glass scenario where you want an endpoint that admins can get to for support. It doesn't require dedicated resources. You can just install it on one of the nodes in your environment. And then when you install as a highly available gateway service, you deploy it on a failover cluster. And you would do this maybe for your mission critical environments where you need those 5 nines of support. You know, if one of those managed nodes has an issue and your management server is down, then you can't support it, and you need that to be there all the time. And then finally, we mentioned that jump box scenario. So you can use Windows Admin Center as a jump box. In this situation, it's used as a jump box from the public internet into a privileged environment. And in this case, the only port that needs to be open to the public internet is 443, or whatever SSL port you pick for your web interface, just like any other web browser you're hosting on the public internet. So when you do this, there's some considerations that you want to do because you're exposing your jump server to the internet. If you go to aka.ms/secure-jumpbox, there's a great article that was published with Windows Server 2016. Windows Server 2016 brought so many new security features to Windows Server that article right there is pretty much the best consolidation of those. And a couple things that are covered in that article are we call them the star guards or asterisk guards, credential guard, remote credential guard, device guard, code integrity. This one is, I think, the most important because when you have code integrity on your jump box, only allowed allowed bits can run. Any malware or anything that infects the box just doesn't run. There's a security baseline. I hope you're familiar with the security baseline that's been published for Windows Server. It's the guy Aaron Margolis is the guy that publishes that, and it's really, he does a really good job with that. And the network firewall port the only one you need for your jump server in this situation is your HTTPS port, which default is 443, but you can set it up to whatever you want. And a few things that you might want to consider when you're securing your jump box that aren't in this article is just-in-time access. There's so many different ways to implement just-in-time access, whether it's on your firewall or just however many things. There's an infinite number of ways of implementing this, but it's very valuable. This is when you have an Azure VM and you want to RDP into it, they always suggest only open it up when you want to RDP in, and that's one of the best ways you can secure a jump box is just you have to turn it on. And then we always suggest if you have any high-value management interfaces in your environment, that you deploy that on something like a shielded VM, so that if the hypervisor or something gets infected, it's safe. And the one thing, this is one of the new things that we've been suggesting is lots of people don't know that Windows Server supports TLS 1.2. We actually get a lot of feedback from users of WAC that would prefer we didn't use it, but by default, WAC just use whatever your environment is configured to use. So if you can disable, if you're able to disable TLS 1.1 and lower, then you should do that in your environment, and just as a best practice outside of all the WAC stuff. So this is all about the WAC gateway. And like I said, this is a short and targeted session. One of the things about WAC is we designed it to be so simple that there's not a lot of things to do. A few other considerations that you can do in your environment outside of that WAC gateway is you can use Windows Admin Center's role-based access control. With using role-based access control in WAC, you can configure your nodes for either just like read-only access, full admin access, or Hyper-V administrators. Right now, we support those three roles. Another thing you can do to improve security in your environment is configure WinRM to use HTTPS. This was a user request that we had been getting since we shipped Project Honolulu. There's lots of environments where WinRM over HTTPS is required in like financial industries and things like that. And we recently just added it to Windows Admin, added support for WinRM over HTTPS to Windows Admin Center. The thing about WinRM over HTTPS, the reason it took a while for us to get this in is all of the traffic that Windows Admin Center does is it's encrypted. The payload is always encrypted, and we didn't, so we were okay with sending that over an unencrypted pipe. But at this point, if you're required to use HTTPS or WinRM, then we can support that now on Windows Admin Center as well. So that was my short and targeted session. These are all the rest of the sessions for Windows Admin Center. This is the main Windows Admin Center. What's new? What's next? It's Thursday morning. And then this is all about Windows Admin Center. These two are just Windows Admin Center exclusive. These guys feature Windows Admin Center significantly. So check out all of these sessions. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about deploying Windows Admin Center.